The year is 2000 and something, and 8-year-old T is playing Spider-Man on his PlayStation 1 after realizing that his web shooter just shoots silly string. Fast forward to late 2018, and 24-year-old grown-up T is still playing Spider-Man, the difference now being it's on a shiny PS4, and now instead of escaping school, he's escaping the reality of his dead-end full-time job. Today we're going to be comparing Spider-Man on the PlayStation 1 and on the PlayStation 4, and even though these games are almost 20 years apart, they have a little bit more in common than you may think.
My name's the Human Spider.
I don't care, get out there.
No, he got my name wrong.
Get out there, you moron.
This was voted most for in my community tab. Be sure to go and visit that if you're a subscriber. If you're not a subscriber, maybe consider doing that too. Spider-Man for the PlayStation was released August 30th of 2000. I was 5 years old.
I'm just a dumb baby, give me milk, I want to fucking sleep.
This is a linear story-based platforming style type of game that most closely resembles the comic books.
Surf the web, surf the web.
Shut up, Brock. We don't have time.
The thing that surprised me most about this game is just how damn well made it was for the time. It's voiced very well, the boss battles are varied and unique, the locations are unique. One cool thing to note is I remember Stan Lee voicing the introduction sequence.
Welcome, true believers and newcomers alike. Spider-Man co-creator Stan Lee here. Once again, we find our hero Peter Parker, better known around the world as the amazing Spider-Man, in a heap of trouble.
But what I didn't remember is he actually has a good bit of voice throughout the game. He voices multiple intro sequences.
Oh boy, Spidey fans, Black Cat is out.
And if you go to like the character gallery type of thing, he voices a lot of the different descriptions of the characters, which was really neat.
Felicia Hardy, also known as the same accident that blinded him in youth, give him all the advantage he needs to fight crime doesn't pay.
This was developed by the talented team over at Neversoft.
If anybody's ever given the opportunity to do Spider-Man as a video game, I think they would just snap it up.
This is obviously the team behind the incredibly popular Tony Hawk's Pro Skater series, rest in peace. And this is made evident by the multiple Tony Hawk Pro Skater billboards that are littered throughout the game, which I thought was really cool.
We just looked at each other, all laughed and smiled and said, we got something that's really fun, even just to move the character around.
And this game was right up their alley because Spider-Man is always constantly a smartass.
You hurt your little touchy wussky?
And the type of humor that Neversoft was good with meshes so well with this game.
Uh-oh, the spider sense tingling. One more step and it's a load of web fluid sticking you to that wall.
Well, it's not the most romantic proposition I've ever had.
Oh, sorry lady, didn't see a thing.
Over the years, for example, like on the Tony Hawk game, we've got the professional skaters coming in, helping us with the game, testing it, giving us advice. So on Spider-Man, you know, it's kind of like the same thing.
Spider-Man for the PlayStation 4 was released September 7, 2018. I remember picking this up day one, midnight release, and it was totally worth it. Going from the PlayStation version to this is kind of like a mindfuck because I forgot how good this game is. The web swinging and the movement is based off of the old Spider-Man 2 PlayStation 2 Xbox game, which is super freaking good. And the combat is buttery smooth with a ton of different upgrades and abilities. Unlike Spider-Man for the PlayStation 1, this actually takes place in a massive open world.
How big is the map?
Very.
How small is the map?
Not very.
This offers you some unique gameplay elements that we'll get into a little bit later, but one thing that was really striking is just how beautiful this game is. Looking back on some of the gameplay, it almost has this uncanny valley effect to it. After coming from the PlayStation version, this is like playing an interactive movie. The graphics are incredibly well made, but that's to be expected from the talented team that developed this over at Insomniac Games. They're responsible for the popular Ratchet & Clank series, so they're really good at producing quality titles. Nonetheless, this game has a lot going on with it. It offers a ton of content, and that's not even including the DLC that is completely optional, and you don't even really notice or miss if you don't have it, which is something you can really rarely say about modern games. Now, all of this is well and good, but let's talk about what you came here for, because I know I'm probably boring you to death. What do these two games have in common other than the obvious theme? So, obviously, they both allow you to be the Spider-Man. They both have well-written stories. Spider-Man 1 having you being framed for a crime you didn't commit, so you're having to work your way through all these different boss battles that are to ultimately lead you up to who's running this whole damn thing. As to where with Spider-Man PS4, you're working your way up all these boss battles, which are all uniquely varied in their size and scope of gameplay. Both of the games do this very well, and both of these arcing storylines fit very well within the universes of each other. Both of these games are just pure fun, clean experiences.
Microtransactions.
Hell no.
Spider-Man for the PS4 was coming out at a time where developers and publishers were saying that single-player games were dead, that they had no place in the market. But that couldn't be further from the truth, because some people just want a good, clean single-player experience. They don't want to have a game riddled with microtransactions and online DRM. They just want to jump in and have a good story. And surprisingly, after all of these years, the PS4 version of the new Spider-Man still offers that. They both have Stan Lee cameos, which is very important, and both of these games outside of their regular gameplay offer a ton of collectibles within the game. As you explore the levels in the PlayStation 1 version of Spider-Man, there's going to be comic books scattered throughout the game. Some of these are hidden in certain spots, and some of these only pop up after you trigger certain events, so it's going to leave you replaying some of the levels to find them if you didn't already, especially if you're a completionist. This is going to be something you look out for. These are actually based off of the real comics, and there's a nice little gallery to show off all of the ones you collected. Spider-Man on the PS4 offers a plethora of different collectibles that you get throughout the open world of the game. Most notably, you find a lot of these in backpacks scattered throughout the areas, but unlike the PlayStation version where these reference actual comic books, these have more to do with the actual world building within the game, but they offer similar little descriptions of what items you're getting. But what would a good-ass Spider-Man game be without the costumes? Both of these games let you bounce around in a bunch of different colors to match your flavor, whether that be red and blue, red and blue, red and blue, red and blue, or just blue. You got a nice little variety here, and not only that, in both of these games, these costumes offer you different ability. Maybe it lets you deal more damage, maybe it gives you more health, or maybe it's just for the raw humor of it. I mean, why wouldn't you just want to play the entire game as Peter Parker himself, or play as Spider-Man if he was half naked with 3 chest hairs? This game lets you do it. Now, if you know anything about Spider-Man, you know there's a certain type of spirit about the whole atmosphere when it comes to a Spider-Man game, movie, TV show, comic, whatever it is. You know that Spider-Man has a certain vibe to him you gotta get right, and both of these games do this great. Like I said previously, Spider-Man is a smartass.
Does Peter Parker think he's just the funniest
Spider-Man does, but not Peter Parker.
You have like 0 personality, but your suit is awesome. Can we talk design details? Maybe later.
You can find his witty quips littered throughout both of these games constantly.
Spider-Wars, come out and play!
Tag! Plus, I think he hates me.
You have that effect on a lot of people.
But you love me, right, Yuri?
I tolerate you.
Wow. That might be the nicest thing you've ever said to me.
This shows that despite these games being decades apart with completely different studios, these developers were not only extremely talented, but they were big fans of the source material themselves. And you can see the love and care that went into both of these titles when it came to giving you an accurate representation of the Spider-Man.
We've really stuck to the book on almost every single thing, and we've tried to make it be, perfect Spider-Man game. He does the right web stuff, he has the right attitude, he has the right quips that he makes.
Despite what version of the game you're playing, you're going to be hitting these boys with different web attacks. The PlayStation version lets you turn yourself into an igloo, give yourself web hands, maybe swing the guy around, maybe just shoot him with your
Hey, charge out of that?
And the PlayStation 4 version gives you skill trees to upgrade different web abilities. You can use like different gadgets. You can use a plethora of different web attacks. You can stealth attack them. And while the PlayStation version offers a lot of this too, this just comes down to the actual hardware and resources that these two teams had. Obviously, the PlayStation version was very limited at the time, but they did a good job of what they worked with. One thing I can't take away from either version of this game is the boss battles. They're both really fun to play, and they were both very well crafted and accurate to the characters that you're fighting against. This is probably one of the highlights, other than the cutscenes, which in both games are done very, very well.
Your reward for getting through this level is to get to that next cutscene and see how the story's going to unfold.
It's extremely entertaining to watch these and play through these boss battles because this is what the game's all about, baby. You're going to be doing this across totally different locations. Maybe one time you're on the rooftops, maybe one time you're in an office building, maybe you're saving some civilians, which you're doing in both of these games because you're the Spider-Man, you're not the bad guy, you're the good guy. The PlayStation version is kind of like a time capsule. It plays very well, and it's almost like you're playing a comic book. The PlayStation 4 version is like you're playing an interactive movie, and sure, the technology is really advanced, the graphics are all pretty, the open world gives you a lot to explore, the game's a lot longer. There's plenty of Easter eggs and secrets in the PlayStation 4 version, but there's also plenty of cheat codes in the PlayStation 1 version. You remember when you could just put in and unlock all. One thing I found out about the PlayStation version that I didn't know is there's kind of like this alternate game mode. It's called What If, and it changes up some of the different cutscenes and gives you this really weird, goofy gameplay to it. It's really cool. Point being, both of these games have a lot to offer. They're both very fun, and regardless of the fact that they're almost 20 years apart, you can have some fun with either one of these games.
What's your personal favorite Spider-Man game, not including this one?
The Spider-Man that was made by Neversoft for the PlayStation 1.
The PlayStation version makes me appreciate all the technological advancements that we've made over the years. I know a lot of times we take these games for granted because we're just kind of used to them, but honestly, if you go back to the PlayStation version, you'll probably have a good time, but you'll also see the newer version in a totally different light, and I think that's totally worth it. But most importantly, I hope you enjoyed this comparison. I really had a great time looking at the two different versions of this game, and I hope you enjoyed watching it. Maybe you see something different in these games that you didn't before. I'm sure you guys have some hot takes or maybe some fun facts that I didn't even mention in this video, so be sure to drop those in the comments. If you like these retro modern type of videos, check out some of my playlists and my other stuff. We cover VR, retro, modern. I try to give you a little bit of everything on here. And if you enjoyed the video, maybe consider throwing a few bucks over at the Patreon. Some of these videos do get a little expensive to make, and it's nice to have a little bit more to put into them. Any donations are greatly appreciated, and it goes directly back into supporting these videos, so I really do appreciate everything that you guys do. Regardless of if you're watching my stuff or you're seeing me now for the first time, I hope you had a good time here on the channel, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one. It's been C. I'm out, motherfucker. And if you really enjoy the video, maybe consider this shows that despite the developers, this just shows that this you fucking retard learning how to talk. Web swinging, wall crawling, web swinging. Wait, fast forward to 2019 and grown up 10 years. This was voted most for in my community tab. Be sure to go and visit that if you're a subscriber. If you're not a subscriber, maybe consider that doing that too. I'm not gonna fix that. Today we're comparing. Today we're gonna be the thing that.